Fantastic. Thank you everybody for showing up and making this my first meetup. And I'm grateful that I'm here with you and that you guys showed up for this. And let's have a dialogue real soon, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, my background, what brought me to start this project, where I'm going with all of it, I should say where I hope to go with all of it. I don't always have as much control over that as I would like. And what my hope is for this particular meetup group. So one of the things that what I really want to jump into is talking about my expectations, or my hopes, that is, around the meetup group and what I'm supposing brought you here. You know, like why this particular group interested you. So I'm going to make a guess around that. And before I tell you what my guess is, I'm going to tell you a little story about when I was 18. That's when I started my undergraduate degree in the University of Minnesota. And back in those days, usually around September 1st, the temperatures dropped from like this within weeks. This happens in Chicago too, as you know, Ohio and all that. It could be like this out in, you know, August, and then September 1st hits and it's now 40 degrees. Okay. Well, in Minnesota, it's even worse. And I had to get up at 8 o'clock in the morning because not only did I sign up for a bunch of psychology courses, because I wanted to be not only a psychologist, but I was also a theater major and also a visual arts major. So by the way, it took me 6 years to get my undergraduate degree because I didn't want to graduate, honestly. I just enjoyed going to school. My parents finally said, we're not paying for this anymore. Finish it up. So I did, and I applied for a master's degree, then I applied for a doctorate degree, and then here we are. 8 o'clock in the morning, I attended a really well-known class that everybody talked about, that actually outside of the University of Minnesota, Arthur Ballott's Intro to Theater History. It filled up the whole theater, 1,000-person theater. And he got up there without notes and gave the history of theater, starting like with early Japanese theater, no theater, all those sort of things, all the way up to contemporary theater. So it was really a lot of history, but also he just did a brilliant job. I mean, I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to do what he's doing. I want to be an actor like him. And he's not even an actor. He used to be head of the department at the University of Minnesota Theater Department. He told a story one freezing morning in Minnesota, and I had to walk across the bridge across the Mississippi River, freezing. Got there, and fortunately he was talking about Theseus and the Greek islands, which warmed me up, kinda, not really, but he talked about Theseus, which I didn't really know much about. Theseus, if a reminder of the story, is the one who fought the Minotaur. Ariadne had to gave him the string to get out and all that sort of stuff. But essentially, he went from island to island looking for adventure. I said, cool. So then he went and talked about Greek theater a little bit. And then he came back to it and he said, by the way, Theseus suffered or was plighted with divine discontentment. And I went, like, that is a cool term. What the hell does that mean? And he said, the Greek gods cursed him with a thirst for knowledge and a continually curious mind, and one that is never settled. Cursed him and blessed him at the same time. Okay? And I went, that's a cool idea. And it stayed with me. About 5 years after that, I was reading Will Durant's History of Philosophy or History of Civilization or something like that. And I think that's where Arthur Ballot, the professor, got it from. That's the only reference. And by the way, I've checked it in ChatGPT and all the other LLMs. That's the only reference to divine discontentment that I found, which is, so we can trademark this. Okay, I just want to let you know we got it. We've got it covered. I'm using it because I thought the idea of a group of people who are aching in a certain way, who are always wanting more. And they kind of know if you give this up, if you give this achiness up, you're no longer who you are. And so, patients that come in and say, like, God, I'm never satisfied. I'm always discontent in a certain way. I don't know what it's about. And I explained to them divine discontentment. And I said, by the way, it's not quite what you're thinking. It doesn't bring you closer to God. It may. Divine discontentment may be part of your spiritual journey, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the psychological aspect of it, which is that strange set of personalities that keep saying, got everything I want, but what's behind door number 3? Or like, and that's what happened with Theseus, is that he had plenty of money, he had everything he wanted, but after, a few months, he'd say, like, okay, guys, let's get a ship, let's go get in trouble. And I thought, this is something I've been struggling with, I think, all my life, which is, I should be retiring right now. Hell with that. Like, what fun is that, right? By the way, the whole idea of, like, always being questioning and hungry for another task, or another set of knowledge, is what helped me work through my deciding not to retire, deciding how to do getting older differently, which I came up with the term adolescence, which is, I'll go into that story later, but basically it's like adolescence, but now I have the money and the time and everything else to do adolescence better than I did before. As an adolescent, you don't have power, you don't have anything, you don't even know yourself, but you have all the energy of being an adolescent. I still have the energy of an adolescent, more or less. I'm just in a better place. Do I have me completely figured out? Nope. I don't think I ever will. Not counting on that. Does that fit with you? Does divine discontentment sound like something that brought you here by chance?
Yeah, I'm always trying to learn new stuff. And especially in my technology field, it's changing constantly. Now with AI, it's exponentially changing, like daily, weekly kind of stuff. So yeah, for sure.
So if it weren't AI, would you say it's part of just your personality in terms of knowing yourself and so forth?
Yep.
Okay. How about others?
For me, it's books.
It's what?
Books and reading. I don't know what I'm looking for in the books, but it's like you go into a bookstore on a certain day and one book doesn't call you, doesn't speak out. Then a month or two later, it does, because something shifted around, and I want to figure out what's inside of it.
So what are you looking for in these books? You don't know, but what's behind that? I mean, why don't you just stay home and watch Netflix?
I don't know. It's like the spark inside that's just like the interest is activated, and it kind of feels like it's somewhere outside of me, just pushing me on. That's the experience.
So it's curiosity, it's excitement about finding out about the unknown. What's behind the cover of that book number 3? Anyone else?
Like, what am I looking for?
Well, I'm just wondering, do you have that sense of, like, does divine discontentment speak to you at all as a term? And if it doesn't, it doesn't.
I'm never content with me or with what I'm doing. I'm always looking for different, better ways of doing things. And sometimes that gets me in trouble because at jobs, people always said I was too much of a change agent or move too quickly. But I get bored easily, and if people can't come along, I just kind of like push my way through, which isn't always good. But I'm always looking at how do we do things better, differently, what's new out there. That's why AI is so exciting to me, because just there's a whole world of possibilities. And I'm in human resources, and HR people can be so boring. They always just want to do things the same way, and they're just so creative and non-innovative. So I just want to shake everybody and just say, like, be different, be bigger, go bigger. So, yeah.
We appreciate that. You're speaking to exactly what I'm going to go with this, is that, Theseus, you would think with his wealth and, I mean, he founded Athens, by the way, so he's the originator of Athens, the city. He's pretty well known. Again, lots of money, lots of wealth. But I suspect, like many people who are divinely discontent, he's pretty lonely, or he was pretty lonely. I don't think he's still around, but they think he's pretty lonely.
I can attest to that.
Yeah.
And divine discontent has been part of my life, I think, since like late high school, when I kind of really knew that I was different.
Okay.
And I came up with a term, I forget if it was late high school or beginning of college. And the people around me, because I'm from the Midwest, and I really stood out, because I was a big guy and I was intelligent and, part of a lot of like engineering programs, things like that. And I called it, the people around me, they were striving for mediocrity. And for those people, psychologically, that was their win, because many of them come from less than.
Yeah.
And if you come from less than, then to be normal is a wonderful thing. That's what they're striving for. But once they achieve what they think that is, once they can at least measure up to the Joneses, no matter how many loans they take out or things of that nature, once they look like they're part of that group, that's where they find their content. And that worked in America, basically from around World War II to about 5-6 years ago. That worked. You could live your entire life right there. But I think that a lot of people are being displaced right now thanks to AI and things of that nature. And it is really shaking things up and causing a paradigm shift. And if you strove for mediocrity, right now, you might be in a place where you're in a little bit of a jam, because mediocrity may no longer cut it, because mediocrity is becoming commoditized.
Well, that's a good point, but I appreciate that. It sounds like you know what it's like to be lonely too, to not fit in and to be different, especially if you're not if you're not aspiring towards mediocrity, because it's kind of a bell curve-ish sort of issue, isn't it? Right. I mean, one thing that I'm trying not to do, it very deliberately, and I feel this, is that I don't mean my project or the concept of divine discontentment to be an elitist sort of approach to things. I'm just saying it speaks to a certain type of person that is lonely in the same way that might want a community of people that know what it's like to be divinely discontent, and so maybe less lonely. So that's what I envision around this group. Robert uses this term all the time. Elitism, it's not for everybody. It's pretty cute. So that's what I envision this group to be about. And so what I envision it to be a safe place for people to come talk about that, the achiness around that, but also the issues that come with it around relationships and around making life meaningful and making life happy, whatever happy means to you. So I want to make sure that you understand that if you're coming here and you want definite answers to things, you probably should leave now because I don't have them. I locked the doors. That's right. Yeah, this is an S session. God, I only have like 20 more pages. If you really want to leave. No, I want it to be a safe place, but I'm also going to use it to go through some of my theories, to talk, not so much theory, but to give to give instruction and skill sets around how to do relationships, what are healthy relationships, what's a healthy relationship with oneself, what's a healthy relationship with others. One of the models that I have comes from my theater background. So with Arthur Ballot, by the way, I was 18 at that time. I received a scholarship from the AFL-CIO as a writer. About 6 months after that, happened to bump into Arthur Ballot in the hallway and said, "Hi, I'm Scott. You're Arthur Ballot, aren't you? You're Dr. Ballot." You know, not one of those awkward things. And I said, "I'm going to DC. Are you still in DC?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I'm in DC." He goes, "Here's my number. Give me a call when you're there." I said, "Okay." So I went to his office, and we went to. You actually walked by it, where I think I showed you on down from where I stay in DC. That was 1980. So I ended up working for him for 2 summers in a row for the National Endowment for the Arts. And then he hired me as assistant dramaturg at the Guthrie Theater after that. So my background in theater, in writing, has informed really strongly all my work in psychology. Because I feel like when I'm sitting there, and the patient is generally over here, what am I doing? I'm listening to stories, right? That's what I'm doing all day long. I listen to people's stories. How does one make sense of stories? So that really interests me. What I've come to when discovering Silvan Tomkins' theories is he was, by the way, a playwright before becoming a psychologist, ending up at Harvard, and discovering, being the originator of affect theory. He basically said, we have all these feelings that we're born with, and because we are storytelling, feeling-oriented creatures from birth, literally from birth, we're trying to tell stories, if nothing else, through expectation, and having as much agency as we can. A newborn can do what? Not a lot. It can't do not a lot at all, okay? It is lying there. What can it do? It can move its eyes. It can say, "I've had enough of this. I'm moving my eyes away. Enough of you. I'm turning my head away, turning my eyes away. I'm done." Agency is there. The story of agency starts at birth. And our stories get more and more complicated because they're all stories that have to do with core feelings. And kind of the tragic place that we're in, actually it's not so tragic, but it sounds kind of tragic when you put it out on paper in a certain way. We only have 2 positive affects. We only have 2 core feelings that are positive. Fortunately, it embraces just about, it does embrace anything and everything that is good. Interest, excitement on a continuum, desire, interest. What is AI? How do you figure this out? All that excitement, energy is in that affect, in that core feeling. The stupidest thing that Western science, literature, philosophy has done is not understand interest, intellectual interest, as affectively based. Interest is a feeling state. So Descartes, Mahler, Beethoven, all those people writing away, writing beautiful pieces of music, writing all this stuff, creating beautiful art. We're not thinking these things through. They were feeling them through and using their big brains to put cognitive overlay on what they were feeling. Okay? It is, when you get excited about AI, when you all get excited about AI, that excitement is a feeling. That's a feeling that you want to wake up to. That's the opposite of depression. Okay? So when people are depressed, when people are anxious, it's usually, well, not usually, it's always because the 6 negative core feelings, that's what I'm saying, there's only 2 positive ones, and I'll come back to the other positive one. There's only 2 positive ones There's 6 negative ones. And those get in the way. Anything that gets in the way of the positive feelings gives us this feeling, gives us the slump of shame. The slump of shame is not a moral judgment. That's our cognitive, brainy overlay about what to deal with that. And I'll explain that in a minute. It is not a moral judgment about the world or about ourselves when we're feeling that slump. It just means we don't have access to the positive stuff that we want. You can't figure it out. You didn't pass the test. None of the people showed up to your meetup. It doesn't matter. I can decide if it's good or bad. I can decide that the test, by the way, shame, that failing a test, what does it tell you? 3 options. Either you didn't study hard enough, the professor's a jerk, or the third one, something in between. Okay? The rest of life is trying to figure out those 3 things. How much of it is me? How much of it is the world out there? Or more likely, how much of it is it in that murky in-between area? Rarely is it all my agency. Except when it comes to shame, what do? We put all the blame on ourselves. I must be stupid. I must be an idiot. I must be a loser. I must not be lovable. Why is that? Because in our culture, we use shame as a weapon. We use shame as a weapon in their education, in parenting, and in politics. We make sure that people don't have access to what will make them feel good. And we have control over them and give them, we give them tests and objectives to have to overcome to get basic stuff. Instead of saying, oh, you don't understand this math problem? Stick around after class. Well, that would mean that we would need 10 teachers for 4 students, right? No, we're going to have like 1 teacher for 50 students. So 3/4 of them who might need more extra time are going to be sent on to 2nd grade when they really shouldn't be, or because they didn't learn the stuff in 1st grade, they're now going to struggle even more in 2nd grade with the stuff they didn't learn in 1st grade. It's tragic. I'm explaining all this because what I find so incredibly important is understanding that we're feeling creatures that think rather than just purely thinking people. Understanding that allows us then to understand what makes us happy and what's meaningful to us. But if we don't know that, we're going to tend to blame ourselves for things that we have no control over. Losing jobs. How much of it is you? How much of it is somebody else? How much? It's probably somewhere in the middle, but with job stuff, a lot of it is the other. It's economics, things like that. Should you look at yourself? Of course. How much of it is you? Depends. You got to look at it. It is not a model that we have in psychology right now. We talk about feelings as if they're thoughts. Actually, the primary cognitive model for feelings is that feelings are a cognitive assessment of something, that we think through our feelings. Okay, then tell a baby when it's distressed that it's acting up. It's not going to happen. That baby is feeling distress, and it's going to feel distress just like an adult is under the same situations. We learn to disguise it, we learn to mimic it, and we learn to socially appropriate ways of dealing with it. If we're sad, if we're feeling shame, if we're disappointed, we need to be taken care of in the same way that a child does. The same way that a child needs to be taken care of. Becoming an adult doesn't change our human nature. It changes the display of what we do. The insides stay the same. So all these core feelings, and for you nerds here, geeky, I'm not calling you names, I mean that with pride and connection. We have hardware that we're born with, our brains and our bodies. And we learn stuff when we're thrown out there, which is the software, right? The affect is firmware. Affect is the interactive. Without affect, without having the hardware being able, something needs to decide what we're going to pay attention to. I know what you're paying attention to if I have your attention, from whatever ways I get it. And there's only 3 ways I can get your attention: through either startling you, or causing some sort of feeling state in you. Hence, social media. Brilliant. It basically hijacks the affect system. So I can do it through fear. I can do it through negative affect, negative core feelings. The other one is through body signals. One of the stories I tell in here is that I used to fly a lot, but starting again due to COVID. But I was distressed. I remember being on the plane, I think it was like a couple months ago, going like something financial was going on. I think it was something with tax related. So I was totally distressed. I'm going like, of course, this means, oh, that's something upstairs. It'll go away. So I'm, of course, thinking I'm gonna be eating squirrel under a bridge, so I'm waiting there on the plane going like, oh, everything's gonna go to shit. Then we get on the tarmac, we go like right before takeoff, I'm going good because I really need to pee. Then the pilot says, oh, we found out we need to wait 20 minutes. Now what am I aware of? What is the only thing that's on my mind now? Okay? I'm not worried about eating squirrel under a bridge. I'm worried about peeing on myself on a plane, like a 6-year-old. And I don't know if any of you have been there, but it is not a good feeling. Okay? We're like, oh wow, it's illegal for me to stand up and go use the bathroom. All worked out. But if you want to grab somebody's awareness, you can change something in their bodies. Okay? So whatever your body's telling you, and if it's high enough in intensity, it's going to have your attention. Hence we have hangry. Okay? Because our body says, hey, something is urgent, and it doesn't do it as a computer program sort of thing. It connects it to affect. So if you're hungry or sleepy or there's in distress because something's irritating you, affective distress will keep increasing until all of a sudden, if it doesn't get taken care of, it turns into anger, rage, and says, you better take care of this now. You give me that damn Snickers bar right this minute, or something bad's gonna happen, or I'm gonna smack somebody. Okay? That's the second way of being alerted to something. So affect, body signals, and pain. Pain. Last Thursday, I went to bed and I had this feeling that I don't like. I had this awareness that I don't like. I'm aware of a tooth in my mouth. It is never a good sign when you're aware of a tooth in your mouth. Like, hi, number 15 or 18 or whatever it is. My dentist told me which number it was. I think it's one of those. Hi, I'm here. You go like, shit, this is not a good thing. I woke up and it was saying hi really loud. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, it was a 2. 2 hours later, it was a 6. 15 minutes later, my dentist knew my issues. Because my tooth had my awareness in big ways. When we discover something intellectually or artistically, the reason it's so exciting is because it's so exciting. Because excitement is a core feeling. Otherwise, you would just be AI. AI doesn't care what it's doing. Which, for all of you in AI, talk to me if you want to learn how to make computers have feelings. Because you have to understand the affect system if you want to do that. We don't do that right now. We're not doing anything around that. We're teaching computers, AI, how to mimic feelings, just like we're teaching it how to mimic music or mimic. By the way, I would love to use AI for my lectures and have them write them for me. It sucks as a writer, as you all know. Like, do you guys compose? Does composing music with AI? Have you tried it?
No, but that sounds like a great idea. I'd like to see what it sounds like. Yeah, curiosity. Intrigued.
I use it to write some things because it generates ideas. It's generative. I probably spend more time rewriting it. Okay, so I think you could probably bring up some cool musical ideas. You would then spend hours cleaning it up, which is fine. It would just be a process.
It's recommended to start with your draft and submit it versus having it write something. You can also add documents so you can create your knowledge base to help
Yeah.
you write.
Well, yeah. So I have the professional team version of ChatGPT, and it has all my writing and everything in it. It kind of writes like me, but
Yeah.
it says some weird stuff sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I like it for brainstorming.
Yeah.
It's brilliant for
Like, when
brainstorming.
I'm like, hey, I've got this business idea, or I'm thinking of a name, or hey, I want to write this type of proposal, and I just start talking to it, and it'll write up like an overview on it. So kind of thing it's good at, but highly specific. You say, here, go do it. It's so confident. It's like, here you go. It's just not it.
No, it's
been different for me. It's been spot on.
Really? Well, that's good.
what has been spot on.
When I ask AI certain things, or
It depends. Like if I'm like having a coding issue, it'll tell me the stuff, and it'll tell me to go to menus that don't exist. And go to a lot of that stuff.
Because
But
oftentimes I'll ask something, but before I ask it, I'll ask the question. But before I type in, and then in front of that I say, analyze and rewrite this question to give me the best results.
Mhm.
And then it rewrites it, and then it answers it through that way, and it's just better that way.
yeah,
It's
it's
more
good
fun.
to tell me what questions do you have.
Yeah.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
kind of things.
Yeah.
It's just
Okay.
sometimes it can.
Maybe we
I
should
use
do
it all the
different
time.
things.
Yeah, yeah. Certain things is good at,
Yeah.
and also the different LLMs are different.
Yeah.
Right?
Like I've
So what
seen
is LLM Central?
large language model. That's the basis of AI.
Okay.
And so basically it's taking everything it's been trained with, and based on math probability is how it's getting your answers.
Okay.
So it doesn't generative AI is the next evolution where it'll actually make up stuff. But right now we're still in the, hey, all these books are loaded in, it has a big memory of all that, but doesn't
Yeah.
create new stuff.
Right.
And so, and yes, giving the preference before it of, imagine you're an expert PHP programmer with 20 years, analyzes this and that, that's good to frame it in context. You get better results that way. But
Give it a role.
yeah, but each of the ones do it differently. Like Claude is a better writer than ChatGPT. ChatGPT will give you a really good skeleton of like a contract or a proposal or something. But if you want like the meat of it, like go to another one or rewrite yourself.
Yeah, there's lots of fun techniques to like switch around. Like, I'll go from ChatGPT to Claude sometimes, and then to another one.
Yeah, now there's Perplexity that's pretty good, and Google has Gemini, and
It's literally nurture
yeah,
because it's based on what it was trained with.
yep.
Well, so we're going back to how we're programmed. The affects basically tell us what to pay attention to. They're what bring things into awareness. Nothing comes into awareness unless there's feeling, affect, or body sensation. So something's got to decide what to pay attention to. And the reason it's decided that it's going to be affect, or at least evolutionarily, is because we walk around in space. Think computationally how much that takes. Something has to stay the same, something has to when you think about what's changing, when you think about just the storage space going from still to videography, massive. Okay, now just live that. Okay, what do you pay attention to? Only the things that you're feeling. That's only things you remember are the things you've done repetitively, over and over again, which is a different type of memory than episodic memory, which is the feelings, the things that you remember that are always related to feelings. Because we don't have infinite storage. We don't have extracortical organizers where I can download shit into my, next to my bed, just boom. I wish I did. I'd be better at names, I'd be better at so many other things. That's now we have phones, exactly. I get ChatGPT on it too. So that's why core feelings are so important. And lastly, the most important one, going back to it again, I want to tell you that the other positive one, the other positive feeling, is enjoyment, joy. So interest is always up energy. Look at that. Look at that. Oh, hey, come here. Check this out. Let me play this for you. Let me do this. Whatever. Enjoyment is always down energy. It's always feeling safe, where you feel like there's very few resources that you have to use to just chill out. We need that. Evolutionarily, we're saying, okay, interest is going out, exploring the world. Enjoyment is coming back and saying, let's make a nice meal. All the wild animals are out there. All the party goers are out there. District, by the way, is right down the street. The largest, I think, dance club in Atlanta. You can hear it on the weekends. Just down the street. Inside here, it's peaceful. I can enjoy myself. I'm sure people are enjoying themselves there, but it's up energy over there, clearly. So those two positive affects, I challenge you to think of anything you really love and really enjoy that isn't within those two. That's a challenge. Think about it. I mean, it sounds kind of limiting, but it's pretty broad.
I heard something one time that resonated. I said we make decisions for two reasons. Was one to gain pleasure, or to avoid pain. So that was interesting.
That's the pleasure principle. That's Freud's pleasure principle, essentially.
Okay.
Tomkins made a matrix out of it. So just made it more complex. So
The nuances.
Hmm?
He found the nuances in that.
Yeah, so it's the complexities. And so when you think of, for instance, again with shame, which is what I wanted to end with, is that shame is the most important factor in our lives. Why? Because of all the memories that we have, the ones that we tend to remember are the ones that shame sticks out. Where we didn't get what we wanted. We always remember the tests that we failed, the jobs we didn't get, the who broke up with us, the things we didn't accomplish, as well as we tend to remember all of our wonderful successes, all the positive ones too. Given that we live in a culture that uses shame as a tool of control, and in really high levels of shame, most of us are walking around with chronic shame syndrome, with constant low-level shame, in which it becomes a lens for which we see everything that we do. So we're always on the alert for being disappointed, saddened, not getting what we want. So again, shame only as a biological response to stimuli out there is basically just saying, I didn't get the elevator. I missed the elevator. I missed the bus. I missed the ball. I missed getting the hoop. I missed the shot. That's all it is. I didn't get married to the person I wanted to marry. There's gradations, obviously. if we have lots and lots of it, and we don't know how, we don't recognize it for what it is, and we don't learn how to help each other detoxify it, we're going to live with chronic shame all the time. And so I feel like this is one of the places that I want to bring that to, and this is one of the missions of my life, which is to bring these topics out and to have people start dialoguing about it. So that was a little less than 2 days worth of material, right? So I kept it under 2 days. Was it close? About a day and a half? Does it feel like a day and a half? Feel like 4 or 5 hours? Is it good? Don't tell the truth. This is the time to lie to me. It felt really fast and really interesting and really good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's all right. You're hired. I loved it. Let's keep talking. I'm done with my part.
So you talked about 2 affects, positive affects.
Yes.
You said there's 6 negative affects.
Oh, do you really want to go there? Do you really want to go negative?
Is that next session?
I can quickly mention them if you want.
Okay, sure.
That's going to be a memory issue here. There's one negative. There's one neutral one, which is startle, surprise, startle. By the way, majority of them are on a continuum. So they start mild and they go high. So surprise is low, up to startle. So that's basically a reset. So basically anytime it says a clap, like if a light honk in traffic, you know, like, oh, okay, oh, he's coming by. Or somebody slamming on the horn, that's going to bring anger. Anytime that there is an intensity of stimulus that lasts too long and is too high, it's going to make you mad. Okay? It's going to bring on anger. And I can promise you, it's going to happen. We're wired for it. We are bio-wired to react in these affective ways. Dismell is a word that he came up with. And by the way, he discovered all these as really kind of the first, because of being the first stay-at-home dad. I think it was 1950s. His son was born, and I think he was on sabbatical or something like that. So he was like observing his kid, and then like, that kid keeps making faces, and everybody around him keeps responding to these different faces and the different noises coming out of this kid. What's that about? And think about it. He was the first philosopher psychologist that actually hung around with a baby, which would have been a smart idea to have women philosophers starting way back early. We've been a lot further on in progress around these things. So in this case, it happened to be a guy, because there were only 1 or 2 psychologists or philosopher women, you know, at that time. But he said, there's something meaningful here. Oh, when that baby starts crying and I feel distress, or it feels distress, I feel distress. We now know that this is due to mirror neurons and things like that. What does a parent do when an infant is in distress? It does what it needs to do to make the infant not feel distress. So he sells all these faces, and the face of dismell is the sneaky one. That's not going in my mouth. Nope. It's also as an adult that says, you stink. You're a piece of shit. Mm-hmm. So, when we're in love and we meet somebody or we're into somebody, it's like, I'm going to gobble you up. I could just gobble you up. Yum, yum, yum. You're just wonderful. I want more of you. Yum, 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 yum. Then you break up. You stink. You're a piece. I could just flush you out of my life. We just go back to the affects. We just go back to the core feelings. We just do adult versions of them. Okay? So dismell is that one. Disgust is ugh. So one is with the nose. And if you've ever fed like a 6-month-old to a 1-year-old food, you probably saw it inside out. She didn't like broccoli. You know, that stink. All those faces, we still do them as adults. Like her, yuck. You know, him. We have great word, supercilious. I don't use that word very often. It's a word that's pretty highfalutin, but it means highbrow. It means like contempt by raising your eyebrow. Sil is eyebrow in French. So supercilious means like, no, you don't belong here. That sort of thing. Distress, anguish. So distress on the low end, anguish on the high end. Anger, rage. Fear, terror. How far am I now? That's 3, 5. One more. Oh, shame, humiliation. Shame, by the way, I wish, this is one thing I've struggled with from the beginning of this project, I call it my project, is one, everybody takes shame as a moral failure. So yeah, I don't have any problem with shame. Yeah, you do. But, I mean, we all do. But I'm not talking about shame as moral failure. I'm talking about shame as any interruption to what you're trying to have with people. What is the first sign of shame at that level? It is self-consciousness. If all of a sudden you're in a room and you're feeling good, and then all of a sudden you recognize that everybody's looking at you in a funny way because you just said something or you cracked a joke and it was flat, you're now super hyper aware of you. You are self-conscious in a way that you weren't the minute before, which is generally what we don't want. Okay? And then you can just think of gradations. You know, I'm aware of being sad. I'm aware of being disappointed. I'm aware of not fitting in. I'm aware of being different. That doesn't mean you've done something shameful. It means you're feeling the biological core feeling of shame. What you do with that cognitively and make a moral judgment about it, you have control over. You don't have any control about the core feeling of shame. And that's a big difference. Did I get all of them? Is there a total of 9 now?
If I count anger as 1, rage as 1.
No, so they're again so anger, rage is 1. Yeah, because they're on the continuum. Dismell, distress, anguish.
Is distress separate from dismell?
I'm sorry, disgust and dismell are the only ones that are not on a continuum. The other ones are on a continuum.
Anguish, fear, terror, shame.
Humiliation, yeah. I think I got them all.
Can shame be ever a good thing?
Yeah. In the right dosages, it's supposed to tell you, be self-conscious. You didn't get what you wanted. If you tell me a joke that didn't work for me or landed on a funny, we go like, yeah, I'll work on that joke or maybe not tell that one. And I go like, it wasn't very funny, but I still like you and we'll hang out, but maybe don't go into comedy, whatever, think through this career thing a little bit more. But that's feedback that you want, okay? My daughter felt shame, not moral guilt, when I said, Arya, don't make me upset right now and keep getting up and not going to bed. This is the last time I'm talking to you about going to bed on time. Please go to bed. I don't want to go to bed. Go to bed. Because she knew I was going to, I didn't get angry, but it's like, come on, you have to shame your child. But basically saying, I'm not happy with you. We're not connected in the way that we want to be connected. By the way, that's the best tool that parents have. They don't have to overdo the shame. With the young kids, you are the number one thing in their life. They just want to be with you. And you say, hey, you just need to use enough shame to get the job done. And that's it. And then
shame's difficult to talk about because everybody's got such a subjective
exactly.
that they're bringing. Especially if we're thinking about the affects of shame as a biologically based feeling. Because as I understand, what most people are thinking of when they talk about shame is their emotional memory of that's been built up over their life, and not the biological affect, biologically based affect.
That's the struggle. Thank you. That's the struggle that I've been having because I can't come up with another word. I keep trying. Self-consciousness
What's
is.
the example, effectively, of shame in the baby? I know it manifests in the slum, but what's the stimulus?
I am wanting to get more of those slow motion videos that infant researchers do. And I haven't had the time to do so, but I found a couple of them where it shows just in milliseconds, like an infant trying to reach something or do something, a young toddler trying to get something, and then it's like, and you could see this like millisecond of like slumpiness. But keep in mind, for an infant, if there are no negative affects for the infant toddler, everything is interesting and enjoyable. Except it doesn't take much for one of the negative affects to get in the way. But if it's in that interest, excitement, enjoyment, joy phase, the whole world is new. Everything is interesting. So it doesn't take long. So it goes, can't get that. Well, look at that. 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 So it's, as it gets older, you'll see more and more of the slumpiness. Turn for 2 to 5 all the way up to 99 years old. Turn the TV off if somebody who's watching a show that they like. What? What are you doing? Whoa! Hey, no, we have to. No, it's not bedtime, is it? No. Oh, come on, man. Reaction to shame most of the time is anger. Okay, 90% of anger in relationships is shame-based as a reaction.
Yeah, and if shame, I guess, a little bit further from the biologically based affect, is anything that's anytime there's a barrier to positive affects. I mean, do you see like depression and anxiety? I guess more depression is the idea that came about, downplaying and diminishing want as a protective mechanism
Definitely.
against shame, because if you don't have anything to want, then it's a desire or want that you have.
That's very insightful. Yeah, I think that's a big component. That's one of the scripts that we write about feelings. How do you deal with shame? Well, in some families, in some societies, you don't ask for much. Or you have a story that tells you that you're unworthy, or that shame is expected, or it's because of your awful personality. Not laughing at that, but I'm just saying it's because you're the fault of it. So that's where the moral part of it comes in for a lot of people, is that they make a moral judgment about themselves, or that they were told directly and indirectly, if you were smarter, or if you were this, if you were that, if you tried harder, if you weren't so lazy, if you weren't so interested in other things like gaming, you'd actually get your homework done. So there.
And I don't know if it's too much of a problem with the language, but it's like, you should be ashamed of yourself. How's that fit into everything?
That's a weird.
That's a weird thing to say.
Because what's the opposite of shame is pride? But you said, don't be so prideful.
Right.
Like, okay, well now we're screwed. we can't do anything around shame or pride without feeling like, okay, now am I doing this right? Well, I can't do shame or pride right.
What sort of effective background, would you be passing on shame? Or I guess what's the inverse? So if you're, if somebody, I don't know, concoct an example where you should be ashamed of yourself. Eli,
Well, my brother once was throwing stones at cars that were parked on the parking lot. I think that would be normal for my dad to be, and he did. don't know if he used exactly those words, but it'd be normal for him to you should be ashamed of yourself. You do that stupid act, it's bad act. So.
Yeah, but what's the feeling state that your father was in? Is that anger?
Could be anger, disappointment,
Or like what motivates? What's the motivator to cast shame onto somebody?
well, one hopes that the motivation for him was for my brother not to do that anymore, and for him to feel the rightful feelings of what he had done was wrong. So one hopes that that's the case.
But
Of
like
course-
in a moral sense.
Yes. Yeah. Of course, I think. Because there's something that's wrong in a moral sense.
Well, it's very complicated because once we start learning language, you go and start socializing. Parents have a lot of work to get their kids ready to go to preschool and kindergarten. They need to make sure they're not pooping in their pants and they're not pulling their junk out and playing with it in public and all sorts of things like that, okay? We need to socialize them because they're going to get into a lot of trouble otherwise for their own protection and safety. And they have to do things that they sometimes don't understand, and they have to, like, when I've raised kids, you're going to do it because I said so. Because I don't have time to explain to you right now because your ass is going to get in trouble by me, and the police going to get involved. You don't throw rocks and destroy cars. Like, he should have been ashamed of himself. Like, he should have known better. Like, I know
And it was kind of interesting because
he was only 3 years old, but still.
Well, he was older than that. But the worst part was I was also there, and I was like playing football with my friend, and I saw him doing it, but I kind of didn't do anything about it. I was like, yeah, whatever, you'll figure it out. And so it was like, so I also got a dosage of that, and at the time, I felt I wish I wasn't hot. It's like stuff like that. But then at the same time, like thinking on it right now, it's like, yeah, I should have done something about it. But maybe post that experience, I have done something about it. I can't think of it right now in particular, but it's negative reinforcement.
Well, it's an interesting and complicated issue right there because with people I feel like I can intervene with, like, I bet if Logan was out in the parking lot and he started throwing rocks at the car, you'd say, Logan, why are you doing that?
I thought you didn't hear that.
Huh? Okay, right. So, but like you almost feel like that's part of the way we learn is that we actually have to learn to like protect each other so we all stay in line in a certain way. So that can feel moralistic, and that's a good type of shame, except there is civil disobedience, which should be allowed too, which is morally correct to do, politically and otherwise, but you have to have the morality in place first. So shame has this role in teaching kids around that, and then you want them to get to a point where they call it all into question and move beyond it, which is what I'm calling late lessons, which is when you're old enough, starting at 23, 24, to start writing your own story. Because somebody has to tell you a story that you have to follow up to that point. I basically, with my kids, had to tell them this is the way to do it. That's why? Because I'm your dad. I'm the boss of you. Bottom line. Now, as an adult, your job is to start figuring out what story is best for you. You can call mine and everybody else's into question. Good luck with the throwing rocks at cars. If that works for you, probably won't. It's not going to work. Better to learn it early, right? So the shame has a role. Shame has a role in relationships. I don't like it when you talk to me like that. Anything in a relationship in which you're getting feedback, That hurts my feelings when you say that. Oh, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. Oh, I feel ashamed for hurting your feelings. Good, I want you to feel ashamed. I don't want you to feel horrible, but I certainly want you to feel self-conscious next time you do something like that, so you don't do it. Because it's not cool when you talk over me in public when we're at dinner and you say stupid stuff in front of everybody else, and they now think I'm like stupid. Whatever, we all have those sort of things with people that we're intimately involved with. That's how we give feedback. Smacking them upside the head is not the way to do it. Overly shaming them with name calling and everything else doesn't work. It's too intense for the crime. So shame has a very necessary place. It's that it is, on a scale of 1 to 10, our culture seems to be fine with starting at 5 and going up fast, when we really need like a 2 or 3 in most cases. But we need to know what it is in order to learn how to
Yeah, just for me, just having this idea of shame as like a barrier to positive affects, that's really helpful for me, just to, anytime that I feel myself feeling bad for any reason, just to be able to recognize that and then kind of wonder what the positive connection is, because sometimes it's like material or person to person, or sometimes it's my relationship to an idea or an ideal,
Right.
or an imagined future or imagined self. I mean, we get this a lot in music, because nothing ever goes the way that we want it to. It'll go well. I'm not being deprecating, but it's never as good as we want it to. So it is difficult to feel that connection, like that really positive connection with the performance. Even when it was a great performance, it's like, yes, thank you.
We are our worst critic,
Yeah.
especially with performing. We know where we made the mistake or missed the note or didn't hold us long enough or whatever. But the audience doesn't, and that's where you get the feedback. And you might think, oh, if they only knew all the mistakes I made. It might be an educator, or when you do the juries and stuff, music, study music. They know.
Yeah.
It's their job to know, especially if they were your teacher. But the audience, it's
What could I hit me as you were talking about is we should almost treat shame as if it was like our diet, like food, and also nourish us or make us fat or whatever. We're constantly having to evaluate. This messes up my stomach. This doesn't, or whatever. I get more energy on these days. It sounds like we kind of got to keep shame in that kind of a continuum.
Again, we have to know what it is in order to do that. When patients come in and sit down for the first time, I ask them if they're physically comfortable. Is the lighting okay? Most of the times, especially if I see if they're feeling a little bit uncomfortable, because their environment needs to feel warm. Because if they're distressed by it being too bright or not bright and not lit enough, I have no control over the noise here. But I try to make the environment comfortable enough for them, because there are things that we can do to lower distress in our bodies and also attend to potential points of shame in relationships. When people come into therapy, they're usually experiencing lots of distress and shame in their lives. Otherwise, they wouldn't be coming to see me. It's usually a sign of a certain type of defeat to have to go, for some people, to say, I can't figure this out myself, I'm going to go see a therapist. So they're coming to me in shame as it is. I have to keep that in mind and immediately try to give them as much agency as I can, to give them put as much control to them as possible. And say, like, it's pretty courageous for you to come here. I want to make sure that you get what you need and that you take care of yourself in relation to me, and that you have the right to take care of yourself in relation to me. And often they're like, but you're the doctor, you know everything. Okay, well, look, listen, that one I have to disavow you right away. You know, that's I don't know everything. Thanks again. Just curious if you have any questions or thoughts, feelings, reflections before we end. What I will be doing soon is offering a series of relationship workshop 4-week courses in which I actually do psychoeducational stuff. I do most of the talking. I did more of the talking tonight than I meant to, but it will really be much more instructive with specific topics around each one of the affects, and then a skill set that I'm teaching, and then a series of those relationship workshops. Honestly, the way to really learn this is to be in group therapy, because it's in vivo. The way you do relationships gets played out with other people, with a skilled clinician, and you get to find out what you're not aware of in terms of your own shame and what's preventing you from connecting in the ways that you want to with other people. And the only way really that I know of is to really learn that in the moment with a lot of feeling, is to be around other people who are committed to learning about themselves in that type of process. And then you can just keep coming back to these if you want to just do it informally, and if that's what you need to do for X amount of time, you're not obligated to do the relationship workshops or the groups, but that's the ones I suggest. I run several groups, but I'm really looking forward to the relationship workshops because I really love doing them. But I'm glad you asked. Those will be available, I hope, in a couple months. There's a little bit of work involved in trying to get all these things going, as you might know.
But the group therapies now, you can sign up anytime.
Yeah, you can sign up. Yeah, I have groups forming all the time. So if you're interested in group therapy, reach out. And you'll have people like this group, just everyday people that with curiosity and a desire to learn about themselves, and a little bit of humility and the right amount of pride, and it's a good combination. So thanks for asking.